Hello, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Elise Cortez Corrigan, and I am a director at the Alumni Association. And I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us for Women of Wonder. A little bit about me. I graduated from Case Western Reserve with my undergraduate degree, and I've worked in higher education for a little over 10 years now. About 7 years ago, almost to the day, like this week, I returned to work at the university with alumni, and during that time completed my MBA part-time. I met my husband and currently reside in the Cleveland area with him and my 11-month-old. And like I said, I want to just welcome you and thank you for attending our program. Now, more than ever, you may be seeking community or closeness with folks with whom you have something in common. And the Alumni Association strives to bring valuable programming through our platforms to connect you with each other and also to connect you with your alma mater. To that end, we have a few polls today to see what's going on in the audience. So I'm going to have Stephanie administer the first one, which is just a general check-in. How are you doing? And in addition to that, just where are you, both physically and professionally? Where are you physically located? Where are you calling in from? And what's your professional experience like? And while you take a moment to answer that poll and check in with us, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Alumni Association. So we host programs and provide resources to all 110,000 alumni of the Case Western Reserve University schools and colleges. We have 25 chapters domestically and 5 chapters internationally. And we have 5 special interest affinity groups. And as we finish up that poll, I'll give it a few more seconds. I just want to say that we appreciate you for seeking community through the Alumni Association and hope that the Women of Wonder program may help you fulfill those goals. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and just check in a little bit. Wow, overwhelmingly, everyone's having a great day. It's Friday and you're excited for this program. So it's really great to see that. And it looks like a lot of our folks coming in from the Cleveland area, 10 people, and then 8 people coming from the US, but not Ohio, and 1 person internationally. So welcome whoever is joining internationally. Taking a look at our professional level, it looks like about 10 folks coming from experienced mid-level professionals, a handful of students and executive level professionals. So that's really great to see that and to know who's out there. A little bit about the Women of Wonder program. It started in 2018 and continues to this day as a collaboration between the Flora Stone Mather Center for Women and the Alumni Association. We host 3 each year, and we have the goal of showcasing and celebrating the achievements of our esteemed alumni, connecting alumni around common interests and elevating professional development opportunities for you. Knowing those goals, I do have one more poll. I just love getting to know what's going on out there. So we're going to administer another poll to learn what brought you here today and how we might help achieve your goals. So if you could share, what brought you here today, what you're hoping to get out of this, and also just a little bit about, the status of the women leaders in your sphere, in your world, checking all that apply. And as you're doing that, I want to share that the Women of Wonder program is definitely one of my favorite programs because it always reminds me of the multidimensional lives of women and the complex ways we use resilience to create, sustain, and uplift our communities. I personally am always, as an alum and a staff member, filled with pride when I hear our speakers, and I know today is going to be no exception addition to that. And I am grateful to be in, I'd say room in quotes because it's a Zoom today. I'm grateful to be in the same space with driven and capable women. So I really appreciate that opportunity. For me personally. And as we close this poll for now, I just want to remind you that we are always looking for additional candidates. So please, if you have any recommendations, please share. As we end the poll, it looks like a large group of people are here to learn from an empowering individual. So I'm sure that Dr. Maier will fulfill that. And then in addition, it looks like a lot of folks have a lot of female identifying leaders in their community, but always seeking to surround themselves with more. So it's really great to see that, and hopefully we fulfill those goals for you. Outside of the Women of Wonder program, there are many ways that the Alumni Association offers to connect with alumni. One way that I'd like to highlight today is CWRU Connect, which is our alumni career network. It is an alumni directory and private community platform that you can use to message individuals and other groups of alumni and students. We will be continuing today's discussion in the Women of Wonder community, which is its own, platform in the platform. So everyone here has already been invited to that, and I will link it in the chat so that you can join in and just have the side conversations, and then after this program is over you can continue that conversation. In addition to that, just a few housekeeping notes. I do want to recommend you to type your questions in chat so that our moderators can see it and ask them of Dr. Maier. And then just to let you know that this program will be recorded and a recording will be available afterwards and shared with all of you. A note that you will be muted by default today, but feel free to unmute yourselves. We're not going to take that option away from you. So feel free to share if you need to, if you'd like to. And then finally, just a note that if you are able, we do recommend you turning on your video so that our speakers can see you and interact with you. We always love seeing your smiling faces, especially now that, it's just a little bit harder to connect in person. So with that, I will be turning it over to Dr. Angela Clark-Taylor, the director of the Flora Stone Mather Center for Women. Again, my name is Elise Corrigan. I will put my contact information in the chat for questions and anything that you may need alumni relations related. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Angela Clark-Taylor.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here on a Friday. As Lee said, I am Dr. Angela Clark-Taylor. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the director of the Flora Stone Mather Center for Women. Before I introduce our fabulous speaker for the day, Dr. Vanessa Maier, I wanted to, for a second, tell you a little bit about the Flora Stone Mather Center for Women at Case Western Reserve University. Specifically, we recently went through a strategic planning process and launched our new strategic plan for the next 3 years, leading, empowering, and innovating. This plan was well underway before we got sent home and are working sort of virtually across the Cleveland area. And we're really committed to seeing it through. And specifically, that plan reestablishes the Center for Women as a community space and social innovator, empowering women and advancing gender equity through research-informed action. And to me, though the Women of Wonder program is something we've been doing long before this new strategic plan, that is an integral part of it. So again, I'm very happy for you all to be here today with us in virtual community. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, Vanessa Maier, a family physician and medical director of Metro Health School Health Program and assistant professor of family medicine at Case Western Reserve University's School of Medicine. is interested in exploring innovative models of care focused on reducing disparities and teaching population health. And so I specifically want to highlight that along with partners at Cleveland Clinic Children's Hospital and the local federally qualified health centers, including Caroline's and Neighborhood Family Practice, she is a founder of the Northeast Ohio School-Based Health Collaborative. She's also the primary investigator on a National Institute of Health randomized clinical trial in partnership with the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, Environmental Health Watch, and the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, utilizing a clinical registry and environmental health screening tool to identify children with asthma most likely to benefit from home-based assessment and remediation. Finally, in her role as medical director at the Metro Health School Health Program, she's worked collaboratively to dramatically expand the capability of the program. By focusing on population health initiatives, the Metro Health School Health Program has tripled enrollment, doubled visit volume, increased completion of prevention health services, decreased emergency service utilization, and improved school attendance. These efforts were recently highlighted in the PBS documentary on school-based health centers in Ohio, Healthy Students Equal Strong Learners. So Dr. Maier, please go ahead and say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words, and I will ask you a few questions.
So I'm so excited to be here and to be with you all virtually, sort of in a very unprecedented time that we're in here. I'm an incredibly proud alumnus, and so I was so excited to be able to come and connect with everyone. And so thanks for turning on your screens. I'm so excited to see all your faces, even if they're just in little squares on my screen. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. So I thought to get us started, I wanted to ask you, what are some adjectives you would use to describe your career journey?
Oh my goodness. You know, here at the medical school, we have this wonderful term that we use for students who may not have taken a traditional path in their career. So we call these medical students, we call them bent arrows, which is really truly a term of endearment that we have for medical students who took, you know, an alternative path to medical school. And we embrace these students at the School of Medicine because we value these diverse perspectives. And I think that my career path would absolutely be considered non-traditional. I was called a bent arrow when I matriculated into the medical school at Case, um, and you know it was a wonderful time to be at Case. At that time, we had an astrophysicist in my medical school class. We also had a professional clown. She had been a professional clown before she went to medical school. So I also had, you know, I had a career in engineering before I chose medicine. So I certainly have had a non-traditional pathway in my career. Um, it certainly was an alternative pathway, the way that I have kind of grown into my position in academic medicine. I certainly am not along the traditional path in academic medicine.
Well, that is a quite impressive thing with all of your accolades, and honestly, something really relatable to share. You know, I myself often feel like I took a very untraditional path with a lot of stops and starts, and I think that's something we know about women's leadership, right? That there's like a lattice, and we move up and down and across it in different ways, not necessarily the trajectory that we automatically assume all leaders will take. So I really appreciate you sharing that. You know, and I think one thing that we've sort of learned about leadership in general is that taking risks, like, right, is something that really we have to become okay with. So I'm interested to know what type of risks you have encountered in your career and how you've made sense of them as part of your career development.
Yeah, I think that this is so important in terms of understanding risk. I mean, I am certainly for the people who know me and know me well, they know I'm rather risk averse. I'm a pretty risk averse person. But what I love is to take these calculated risks, right? To take a calculated risk, and that's really exciting to me. You know, it's so interesting because when I was in Case for my undergraduate degree, I befriended this group of rock climbers. So it just for those, I don't know if anybody is on here from from Cleveland, but it's really hard to be a rock climber in Cleveland. Ended up, you know, being roomies with this group of guys who were a bunch of rock climbers, and I used to make fun of them. I would say, "Oh my goodness, you drive 6 hours down to West Virginia to go." To climb up a cliff, to come back down, and to drive all the way back to Cleveland. It made no sense to me, but finally they got me out rock climbing, and I got hooked rock climbing, which is actually how I met my husband, which is a whole nother story. But anyway, so in what a wonderful thing to do, to be, you know, out in these beautiful scenery and climbing. A wonderful thing to do, you know, sort of in your early 20s. um, but it taught me a lot about taking risks. You know, a lot of people, you know, look at my husband and I from our early days when we were out climbing all over the country, taking, you know, what appear to be significant risks. And, you know, it taught me a lot about trust and trusting the people with your life, literally, while you're climbing, but also about taking calculated risk, about how to do that, and how to think about risk. And, you know, this is something that we do in medicine every day. Every time I see a patient, every time I suggest a therapeutic plan, you know, I'm talking about risks and benefits, and we're analyzing that, and we're critically appraising the risk and benefits of any decision that we're making. So, yeah, I would classify myself as very risk averse. But I actually, when you think about it, I sort of love being in that space where I can critically analyze a risk and then kind of lean into it and be able to take that risk.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that as well, right? If we never try, right, we most likely will fail. I'm trying to think of the quote specific to that, but, you know, I think often too, when we specifically think about women, right, women tend to wait to apply for a job till they meet 80% of their criteria, right? Or often men will apply when they only meet 20 to 30% of that criteria. And so, but I want to particularly pull a thread out of what you previously said about calculated risk, right? So you have taken some risks, you've made sure those are calculated. How do you decide that criteria for risk taking when you're making decisions?
Yeah, it's really challenging. And I think the thing is that sometimes you won't know, you know, just sometimes you can't, you know, sort of calculate every risk, and sometimes you have to go with, you know, with your vision, with your mission, you know, and you have to take a risk that you don't know necessarily, you aren't able to see. You know, you're gonna step out onto something and you can't really see what that foothold looks like, but you know where you're trying to get to, and you know it's worth it, to take that risk. So yeah, absolutely, I think we're all, you know, trying to push the envelope and trying to see where those risks can take us. I think, you know, the opportunity to take a risk, you know, is really like an incredible privilege, and so grateful for those moments when I have been able to take a risk, and to know that that it's okay to fail, right? Like, you know, that's part of it. And I also think that those times when you take risks and are able to fail, I certainly find that those are the sort of the most meaningful and valuable learning experiences that I've had, are when I take that risk and fall, because you certainly you get to gain a significant amount of perspective when you're at the bottom. Or after a fall, all of a sudden it's like you get a whole new perspective on where you're going.
That's wonderful. Could you maybe tell us about a time or a scenario where you tried something that you thought was risky, how it worked out, and how you made sense potentially of that failure?
Oh my gosh, I've had so many failures. Okay, where do I start? I think one big challenge. So I did, my medical school at Case. After medical school, you go on to do a residency if you're interested in practicing clinical medicine. And then I was so blessed to be able to do my residency at university hospitals in our family medicine program, which was one of sixth in the nation when I did my residency training there. And I had this incredible opportunity I knew I wanted to do academic medicine. And I had this amazing opportunity after residency to do a fellowship in academic medicine, and then took a position at university hospitals, and was very interested very early on in public health and in primary care. And for those who may have some experience in academic medicine, certainly, we have day jobs of caring for patients, and then we have sort of night jobs of advancing our academic career, which includes, so it really is sort of a 210% career trajectory. Mine's been a little bit different because I have been part-time. So I'm on a very different trajectory, kind of as we talked about before. And, as a part-time academic medicine physician, which is in and of itself a very bizarre and not very common situation to find yourself in, I learned very early on that I had to be very careful about what I became involved in and what I said yes to and what I said no to. So early on in my career, I was lucky to say yes to a number of wonderful programs that really advanced my understanding and my experience, and really helped me along my path where I was trying to go. But I very much remember I was incredibly passionate about a program called Centering Parenting. So, Centering Parenting is a healthcare delivery mechanism for preventive care in children, and it is so near and dear to my heart. And as an early academic medicine physician, I was approached to help expand a centering parenting program at university hospitals, and I kind of jumped full into that. And invested a significant amount of time and effort, and was writing grant proposals and really meeting with the development office and really trying desperately to get a centering parenting program up and running. And it just wasn't the right time, it just wasn't the right space, and unfortunately it just didn't have the right support. And so it was a risk. And I think I looking back on it, probably was naive of me, given, right? Like now I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? Of course, I should have done the risks benefits analysis on that and recognized that, we still had a little bit to go in terms of building capacity for that type of a program. But I don't regret that, because I learned so much from that experience, and, really was able to take what I learned from that and apply it to so many other, like programs that I've been involved in. So yeah, I think you just learn and you grow, and you learn from those kinds of experiences.
That is so helpful. I mean, I really think I want to go back to sort of this idea where you talked about now your career path is also a little unconventional, right? Perhaps. I don't know if that's a word you would use. It's the word I'm using.
Absolutely, I would use that.
Good to describe it, but I think all of our career paths should be unconventional, right? We talk a lot about emotional and social intelligence at the center and at Case Western Reserve, right? And how that we should be driven by our noble purpose and the impact we want to make. And it sounds like you took on that project because that's what you wanted to do, right? And that you've crafted a career around that, right? So I think, you're sharing with us how we might do that for ourselves. And you kind of talked about, so in the end, it seems like you had to pull back from it, right? Which again is another great transition, because I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about how, as you've gone into different roles and taken on different projects, when you realized it was the right sort of move to move on in your career. And how did you decide to do that, to apply for a new position, or to move out of a position you were in into something new?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great segue. I mean, I was sort of at university hospitals really working on trying to, build some of these population health initiatives and really kind of struggling, and it was hard. I mean, that was at the time frame where
To you.
I think
There we go. We
I
lost
think
you for a second there, but
oh,
we've got you back. Yep.
can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
I Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I've got two teenagers at home and a husband working from home. So even though we have fiber, sometimes I wonder. Okay, but you can
Somebody's
hear me
probably
now?
downloading something.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, so it was in that time frame where I was kind of struggling, trying to get this program up and running, and had this wonderful offer. The chair of the Department of Family Medicine at Metro Health had built from the ground up this program in collaboration with the schools, putting primary care providers into schools. And from, a public health, population health perspective, this is sort of a dream scenario. And, approached me and said, I've got this program and I'm looking for a medical director. And first and foremost, I'm a physician, and my commitment is to my patients. And I built my practice, and I had my patients that many I had delivered, that many that I'd known since my first year of residency. And I remember saying to Chrissy, well, Metro. I mean, for us Clevelanders, right? Like back then, Metro is only on the west side. I'm like, I don't know if my patients will go over to the west side. And Chrissy said, oh well, we have a Beechwood location. Would your patients come to Beechwood? I said, what? Metro has a Beechwood location. I just was, anyway, it was absolutely, a transition for me. Like I have said, I'm relatively risk averse, so I need to need to weigh all the risks and benefits on both sides. But it really, um, it was something I was unable to sort of fully analyze, but I did really, kind of just jump, you know, both feet in, because it really did kind of resonate with my overarching goals and kind of where I saw myself heading. So, and it turned out to be really such just the right decision.
So, you mentioned a little bit about this risk aversion, right? And then taking calculated risks and how you've learned that skill, developed it, grown it in yourself, right? So how do you think this particular phrase, fear of change, resonates with some of those experiences you've had? And how have you also, if you have, learned to overcome some of that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Fear of change resonates with me very strongly. And I mean, I think yeah, absolutely. But I do think fear is very powerful, and I think that I'm actually sort of fascinated. I don't know if anybody knows about or Andrew Huberman in his neuroplasticity lab at Stanford. I'm sort of fascinated by sort of what we're learning about fear and how we learn, and how fear can be an incredible motivator, but can also sort of immobilize us. And how to kind of orchestrate your relationship with fear. I do think, maybe back to the bizarre rock climbing correlation, but I do think, this like formative time in my 20s, kind of looking at how fear motivates me in particular, and sort of having a relationship with fear. And I think women know this, right? Because there's this, we women have always resonated with me when we talk about parenting, right? Like, how do you use your fear in parenting? Because, of course, as a parent, we talk about the importance of parent understanding your fear as a parent, being able to control your fear as a parent, and sort of lean into it a little bit, right? As we allow our kids to take risks. You can tell I have a 12 and a 14-year-old in my house talking about this stuff, but in the middle of a pandemic, right? Like, what risks are you allowing your kids to do? Anyway, so absolutely, I'm absolutely fascinated by this sort of construct of how do we leverage our fear? How do we lean into our fear? I think that it is absolutely true that we have to, especially as an educator, I will tell you, it's interesting. I think in the medical field, unfortunately, we often place students in situations where we think fear is going to motivate, and we really need to be aware of how our students are learning, and how they in themselves are motivated or immobilized by fear, and how to help them leverage that, so that they can use it in a way that's meaningful to them. But yeah, I'm probably, if for anybody who's interested in this neuroplasticity and fear, I'm totally fascinated by Andrew Huberman. You should definitely look him up.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, fear and anger can be great motivators if we know how to channel them into ways that are productive. And it's so different when those come from us as opposed to come from those that are leading us, right? When we lead others, leading from positivity often goes a lot better, but that internal, those intrinsic motivations, right, can be really powerful. I appreciate you sharing that. I'd like to, that's most of our prepared questions. And so I'd love to turn to questions that were sent in by folks that are here with us today, if that is all right with all of you. And particularly, I'd like to start with a question from Carol Cully, who is actually an executive MBA alumna, and she would like to know who inspires you. And so this is a great transition again with you mentioning you were at Stanford.
Yeah, I have so many. So Kamara Jones, if anybody knows about Kamara Jones. So Kamara Jones is really incredible leader. So she's a family physician. She's an epidemiologist. She's the past president of the American Public Health Association. And I use her work frequently in my teaching at the medical school. So I've been teaching now at the medical school for over 12 years, and I began talking about racism and the effect on health probably over 10 years ago. Talk about leaning into fear. I certainly had many faculty members who really needed to kind of lean into the fear of talking about racism way back, 10 years ago. And luckily, our medical school has embraced this concept. But so Kamara Jones has been an anti-racist activist, as I said, family physician, epidemiologist. She really is one of my heroes. She is the author of The Gardener's Tale. So for anybody who has not seen her TED Talk, I really recommend anybody please Google Kamara Jones and The Gardener's Tale, and let her tell you these wonderful stories. She's an incredible storyteller. Also, Quinn Capers, who is an interventional radiologist at Ohio State. He's actually unfortunately leaving Ohio State, but his anti-racism work has been instrumental in how we talk about implicit bias in terms of our our acceptance into medical school. So he basically single-handedly instituted a number of integrated initiatives within Ohio State to change the way we do medical school admissions that have dramatically improved enrollment of underrepresented minorities in Ohio State. So he also, please Google Quinn Capers. He does a wonderful job in explaining the way in which implicit bias is operationalized in medicine and in medical school admissions. It's very well done. I have so many people who inspire me. We're just like going down the list of all these people. But yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing to be a part of these communities where we have these true thought leaders who are pushing the envelope and are thinking in these new and innovative ways about how to make change in their communities.
No, absolutely. And I think, going back to when you were talking about fear and the fear of failure and how it's something you found that a lot of women have, I think especially women who have multiple marginalized identities, right? This idea that if we fail, we're failing for lots of other folks, right, that are behind us, that we're hoping to lift up with us, right? And so I absolutely understand those connections with also who inspires you, right? Because they create the lens you bring to your work. So we also have, and I think a lot of these things we've been talking about so far really touch on this next question from Virginia Day, which is what has prepared you for the resiliency that you have shown in your career thus far?
Oh my gosh, I have the best parents ever, right? I've been thinking about this a lot as a parent, as we're parenting in the middle of a pandemic, as we're kind of leaning into that fear of our kids taking these normal risks, that they should be taking as adolescents. And, just looking back on my own childhood and how my parents like supported me in failure. They were like, I mean, I think, those people in your lives who still believe in you, even as you're failing, and let you fail. I mean, I think that is that is so formative, particularly sort of in childhood and early development when people support you in your failures. I think that's critical. And I've been blessed to have those people who are, around me and surrounding me that believed in me even as I was failing, and helped me see what I could learn in failure and helping me focus on, where I was going, even as I'm climbing over significant barriers. So I think I've just been so grateful. And I think, as we teach the medical school about health determinants and about the importance of our social networks and our social structures, and how grateful I am to all the people who have been there for me and have supported me. And I think it really is, your resilience is a result of the people in your lives who are there for you and support you. And I've just been so blessed to have that.
Thank you so much. So we have another question, one from Amanda Dracos, who is a 2020 Physician Assistant Studies alumna. And I, not a medical person, do not understand exactly what this means, but PA-C med? That's probably Physician Assistants Medical School? Yeah? Okay.
Yay, hooray.
Right.
We do a lot of really wonderful interprofessional collaboration with the PA schools at the medical school. So we're excited. And I love when we get to see our PA students. I oversee the first 5 weeks of medical school at Case, and that includes population health and public health and epidemiology and biostatistics and bioethics and something we call health system science. So sort of introduction into the health system that we health non-system that I like to say, but sort of how we've come to the way in which we deliver healthcare in this country. So that includes sort of healthcare legislation, among many other things. So we get to collaborate with the PA school. We bring PA students and medical students together. And this, every year we've done a pandemic preparedness exercise, which we've pulled from public health training. And this year, you can imagine the pandemic preparedness exercise based on our experience thus far with COVID was quite an interesting thing to be doing by Zoom with 250 students. And I think we had something like 55 community and faculty members involved in that training. So it was quite an experience. But it's so wonderful to see a PA grad. That's fantastic.
Oh, I'm so happy you provided that context for everyone, myself included, because I think it's particularly important to answering her question as well, which is, what advice do you have for a newly graduated healthcare professional who is seeking opportunities in community health?
Come and talk with us at Metro. Uh, that's my response. Please reach out. We're always trying to bring people into the team over at Metro, and I'm so grateful to have, really wonderful PA colleagues at Metro and lots of opportunities, particularly now for community health.
Excellent. I hope that you will both connect either in the Women of Wonder group, right, on the alumni platform. That would be fabulous. I see Elise got very excited about that suggestion. I love this next question from another alumna, or I'm assuming alumna, Rima Zubiri from 97. And I would love to know your answer to this question as well, as my roles become more senior. So as your roles become more senior, how do you learn to make more decisions with less information, since more work that's being done are being done by those who report to you?
Yeah, it's interesting in medicine, right? Because this is part of the hierarchical structure of medicine. So we have an incredibly hierarchical structure in medicine where, the more junior people on the team report up the hierarchy to the senior people on the team. And so, in medicine, you sort of begin to recognize the value of that system in terms of a safety and a double check and everybody's checking everyone else. But you also recognize how much information then is processed up through the medical student to the intern, to the resident, to the attending physician. And certainly, when I was an initial attending physician, I was double checking everyone's work. But you're right. As your team gets bigger, as you are needing to make decisions more and more on trust of your team, I think it's trusting the people that you work with and understanding their strengths and their weaknesses and recognizing that, and also just having a lot of grace, particularly now. And but absolutely, as somebody who um tends to very much focus on the details, as I've shared, tends to be rather risk averse, likes to see, all the data. Those are big challenges. I've always found that I need to really remind myself that I know my team, that I know that I trust them. But absolutely, I couldn't agree more with that question. That's a continual challenge for sure.
Absolutely. And I can relate. And so we have sort of another kind of career connection question that I think is really interesting. So what do you think about someone in the public health space that maybe comes from the social sciences? I can relate to this. So in this case, social work, and what kind of, would you suggest going on for advanced degrees, particularly in healthcare administration or other areas, to be able to move up into more of a executive or vice president type position?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So, I'm 100% about gaining new skills and new education. Of course, you have to analyze the program and ensure that that's going to be meeting your particular goals, and understanding what your pathway looks like to you, or what your dream pathway looks like to you, and how you're going to leverage that education. But right now, we need our social work colleagues involved in how we're delivering healthcare. And I will say, as so the Metro School Health Program, we actually fall under our Population Health Institute at Metro Health, and so we are an outreach branch of our Institute for Hope. And anybody who is interested in this and health determinants and social determinants of health, please check out Metro Health Institute for Hope. It's so innovative. What Sue Fuhrer is doing is just really revolutionary in terms of sort of many of the initiatives under the Institute for Hope. We need our, social work colleagues in the healthcare space and healthcare delivery space right now, more than ever. So I would encourage anybody with that vision to please just jump right in. We need you.
Thank you so much. Continuing on this theme, we have a question from a recent graduate, Jody Makara, 2019, who wants to know, for those who are currently in medical school during the pandemic, what advice do you have for them moving forward and balancing career development with personal well-being?
One of the things that we talk about when we talk about implicit bias in healthcare, we talk about the value and the incredible importance of self-care for physicians. And, I tell all of our medical students that understanding how you in your journey need to do self-care, and placing your own mental health at the very top of your priority list, is critical for your patients, for your future patients, and particularly if you're committed, to ensuring that you have the most access to your frontal lobe. I mean, we really do talk with medical students down to this sort of physiology of learning and the recognition of how important it is to do sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. It really is important, and the sooner we all begin along the journey of focusing on our own mental health and ensuring that we are mentally healthy as we come to each and every one of the spaces that we show up in, and particularly for our patients. And so I really think this is a critical part of being a good doctor. And it certainly is something that we start talking about with case medical students right from the very beginning.
I can't believe how well I feel like your narrative and the way you're answering questions kind of lends itself to all of the different things that folks are thinking about right now that joined us today as I scroll through our questions. And so, as you start to talk about the importance of additional education, right, and making sure that we're serving the greater Cleveland area in the best possible ways, one of the questions we have from a current student, current MPH student who's thinking about, set to graduate in the spring, is interested in possibly going into medicine in the future, and was wondering about your student journey that you mentioned earlier, and how your MPH degree or Master's of Public Health degree helped you in your medical career.
Yeah, so talk about a non-traditional of career. I finished a residency. I knew I wanted to teach, and so I was early on committed to primary care. And from my perspective, this was a social justice issue. So I certainly recognized pretty early on a number of deficiencies in our healthcare system. And granted, this was like, we've made some progress. This was back before the ACA that I matriculated into medical school. So we've made some progress, but there are huge, clearly, challenges with accessing primary care and having the sort of impact that other countries certainly understood in terms of primary care. So I knew early on I wanted to go into primary care, and it's an interesting process being a case medical school graduate and going into primary care. That certainly was not. I was in a very small minority of students who graduated from case. That's changing, and I'm very committed to ensuring that all of our CWRU School of Medicine medical students consider very highly a career in primary care. I could not have chosen a better career for myself. But so I knew I wanted to do primary care. Like I said, I knew I wanted to do academic medicine because I recognized that if we are going to be able to access the value of primary care in this country, we need to ensure that we have the brightest minds going into primary care, and we need to make sure that those primary care physicians are well trained. So I was very committed to sort of passing on the legacy of those who had trained me, and so I was committed into teaching primary care. But I was also really interested in public health because, as you can see, I was very focused on the health of populations, and wanted to understand a little bit more about how I could have an impact outside of the one-to-one interaction that I was having with my patients, that I was identifying within my patient population, right? I was seeing a patient, and then, oh, lo and behold, I'd see another patient who is experiencing the same thing. Oh, another patient is experiencing the same thing. So I clearly could identify from my patient care specific issues that were pertinent to the population that I was serving. And I could recognize that a public health degree would allow me to impact those more population health outcomes. So if for me, I really just feel so blessed that I can be a clinician, an educator, and a scientist and advance the health of populations. And it also has, I think it really informs my teaching. So at the medical school, like I said, I'm responsible for the first 5 weeks of medical medicine, where we teach population health and epidemiology and health determinants, and then we began talking about racism and the impact on health. We talk about structural violence and the impact on health, and students, to their credit, said, you can't teach us about structural violence and not teach advocacy. So, another small portion of what I do is I oversee our advocacy curriculum at the medical school, which is truly, and please, anybody, please Google the advocacy curriculum at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. I'm the faculty mentor. It is driven by our students. And our medical students are true leaders in political change for health improvement of populations. And I have truly been inspired by what they've been able to accomplish. And they are really leading the way in this recognition that physicians really do have a professional responsibility to advocate for political change to improve population health. So it's been wonderful for them to be really involved and engaged at this time in particular.
So we're coming around to our last question. And this is a great transition because, well, interestingly enough, this morning we're actually meeting with 25 faculty in the medicine school, women faculty, and we were talking about the importance of primary care and how CASE has this focus on subspecialties, Case Western Reserve, right, and how we need to have this broader focus. But we were also talking about how important it was to think about implicit bias in our leadership with our patients, right, with our students. And so I love to close with this last question from Jennifer Davis about if you could tell us a little bit about how the program specifically recruits women and minority students of color and helps to increase, right, those students in family medicine beyond sort of this implicit bias lens.
Yeah, and it's so wonderful to work, at Case right now, where it really is the focus to be able to increase underrepresented minority representation, and to be, we've been kind of hovering around the 25 to 30%, and we know we need to push the envelope with that. And then also thinking very critically about how we're really fully integrating students, supporting students, making students feel welcome. How do we do that right off the bat? And I think, as the faculty overseeing the first 5 weeks of medical school, in a space where we're talking about racism and structural violence, how are we doing that? How are we ensuring that all of our students are welcomed and supported? And, we talk a lot about the silent curriculum. So, and for anybody, like, also please Google the silent curriculum, the JAMA Piece of My Mind, which was beautifully written by a medical student who talks about this challenge in medical school about what is this under not stated curriculum. And so, as faculty, I'm certainly very focused on that, and we ensure that we bring our exceptional African American faculty members in. We bring in partners, anti-racist partners from the community who are doing incredible things, and we really hold them up as exemplars and introduce them early and get our students connected and integrated early. And I think that we really do have a long way to go. We're beginning this process of creating spaces and creating I like this idea of creating feedback loops. So we've integrated our students into our curricular development teams, so that they can be the ones to tell us about our blind spots, because we all have them, and they really have been integral to ensuring that our silent curriculum is one that we're proud of.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. This was such a great way to shape the conversation, talking sort of about your journey into what you're doing with your leadership right now that you're in a role where you can do some things to make some change. So I really appreciate you being here with us today. And I'm going to turn it back over to Alumni Relations to wrap us up.
I also want to echo Angela's thanks to you, Vanessa, for your time today and for the conversation you've provided and all of the great, interesting notes that you've shared. And I definitely will take away a lot of notes about just like how fear and risk both motivate and immobilize you. That just like speaks to me in so many ways, yes, as a parent and as a woman and as a leader. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing all the parts of your journey with us. I did put a link in the chat again for a continued conversation, and I hope that everyone will share their thoughts in that community, in that discussion board with us. I hope that you are enjoying or will enjoy the wonderful weekend and the wonderful weather we're having. And you have some time to be outside and enjoy time with family or whomever is around you in your community. And thank you to everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again for a future edition of Women of Wonder. And again, thank you, Dr. Maier.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. I had a great time, and I hope that people will reach out if there are any other questions questions that you have or if I can be helpful at all.
Absolutely. We will keep in touch for sure. Thank you.
Bye.